Welcome to the Global Solutions webinar series hosted by S&P Global Mobility. If you are new to the webinar platform and require information on how to navigate, please access the guideline from the resource list.
There are over 1.5 billion vehicles on the road today that all have something in common: the essential intelligence of S&P Global Mobility. We provide invaluable information across the entire value chain, enabling vehicle manufacturers, suppliers, dealers and consumers to make decisions with conviction. Our proprietary data is used to set pricing, plan future production, determine demand, and accurately predict make and model preferences. We give consumers powerful and intuitive tools to help them buy vehicles, understand what they're worth, schedule service, and decide when to sell. And as the industry undergoes its most profound shift since mass production, our data and expertise provide forward-looking insights to improve sustainability and advance innovations such as electrification, autonomous driving, and digital retail. The next chapter in automotive history is being written. Pioneering decisions are being made using the essential intelligence of S&P Global Mobility.
If you don't hear the presentation or if the slides are not advancing, please refresh your screen. Click on any of the tools below to find directions for submitting questions, downloading presentation, etc. And most tools and widgets can be resized. I'm Jeremie Bouchaud. I'm with S&P Global Mobility, and I'm the director managing the practice for autonomous driving, EE and semiconductor on software at S&P Global Mobility. And today, it's my pleasure to present our latest insight on software-defined vehicle. How ready are the OEMs, and how do their approaches compare? So we will start with what is an SDV. You've heard SDV probably like me in many different ways here. You know it's a buzzword, it's used for marketing purposes as well. So we will try first to bring some clarity on what is SDV, what are the various types possibly of SDV readiness. And now we will see after this which cars are SDV ready today in 2025. And then we will see how fast the rest of the industry is getting ready for SDV. And in the final part of the presentation, I would like to expand here and to look as well at the new revenue stream on how does it connect or correlate here to the SDV readiness of a vehicle and of vehicle brands. So I wanted to start here very concretely with some very recent claims made by traditional OEMs, all of them very fresh here over the last 2 months. So the first one, the Volvo ES90, which was announced here in February 2025, Volvo claiming we are level 5 SDV. Then last month, BMW has introduced more formally the NCAP platform on presenting it as the next step for the software-defined vehicle. So Renault as well has presented the Estafette, which is coming in 2026, on presenting it as its first SDV vehicle. And then Volkswagen in the last earnings call presented the ID.1 coming in 27 as its first software-defined vehicle at Volkswagen. So we see a lot is happening here at OEMs, and we can also look at further details here from the announcement to try to come with a definition of what is SDV. And there is an industry consensus here that an SDV vehicle is typically a vehicle which can be upgraded, updated throughout its lifetime. And this is what we see here with Volkswagen, for example, with new functions updated throughout the entire life cycle. Another aspect here is the ability to debug, to debug remotely here to avoid recall, for example. This is one of the aspects Volvo is putting in front. Another aspect is scalability, and it's Volvo is touching on it here. Once you do it once, you do it it's forever. And then same aspect or another aspect of scalability is brought by BMW as well here, mentioning that when you have an SDV vehicle, it will be able to benefit from new functions introduced in next generation vehicles. And then the last interesting aspect of SDV are the cost savings, and that's the angle which Renault, for example, here is putting in front here in this release. So as you can see here, a lot of different claims on a lot of activity from a number of OEMs. But a typical question we hear from our customers is, are all of these vehicles equal? Are they all really SDV? Are some more advanced on how do you measure that? It's easy to have opinions on that, but what we've been trying to do is to develop a grid to really, with facts, measure the SDV readiness of these vehicles and to provide answers. And we are showing here how we have been trying to establish a kind of a standard definition here of SDV under the various levels of readiness for SDV in the industry. So we decided to go similar to the autonomy level of industry, because the industry is used to that. So we have defined 6 SDV readiness levels here, from level 0, so not connected, no SDV at all, to the right level 5 SDV readiness, so full SDV, and that's really for real-time deployment here of upgrades across all domains in a very, very dynamic way, and ready as well for deploying AI features, for example. And then we have intermediate levels. So we have level 1. So this is a vehicle which is connected, but typically just for updating maps, for example, on infotainment. Level 2. So that's one level further. It's not only updating maps, it can also upgrade applications. And it's not only for infotainment, but also for other domains, for example, including either powertrain or ADAS here. And it's not only about upgrading, but this is where you can start debugging, which is very interesting as well. The level 3 is called efficient upgrade, and this is where we are seeing progress on these OTA updates here to be able to upgrade several functions, several domains here at one time with the same OTA upgrade. And then the level 4 is one further step here in terms of efficiency. This is where we can start seeing some dynamic resource allocation between, for example, the compute and storage here. This is as well where we see some progress on the cybersecurity part. It's not only cybersecurity in the car, but it's cloud connected here. So with some continuous monitoring of the vehicle on the security aspect of the vehicle. So these are here the various levels of readiness which we have defined. And on the left, we have explored and defined which are the technologies you need to reach these various SDV levels. And we have defined 3 groups of technologies: the OTA, quite obvious one, software, and then the hardware. So starting with the software, we are showing, or with the OTA, sorry, we are defining several levels of OTA here, and we are defining full OTA as the necessary condition to reach an SDV readiness level 4 or 5. So full OTA means at least 3 domains which can be updated, upgraded here, including infotainment on powertrain. In terms of software, we have 3 major technology groups here under software. The first one here is the software architecture type. And for reaching the upper level here of readiness level 5, we are assigning here a full service-oriented architecture as opposed to signal-oriented architecture. And that's really important in terms of efficiency and scalability here of the OT upgrade. Cybersecurity is obviously very important for any connected car technology, and we are here assigning as well necessary condition for level 4 and 5, being not only cybersecurity in the car, but here also with the cloud aspect. We have also the unified OS. So as a condition for level 5 here, we have what we call fully unified. So it means not a single operating system, which is just for a single domain, but all of them being on one unified or in two cross-domain OS here for the vehicle. And then looking at the hardware technology, the E-architecture obviously as well really playing a very important role. We are really using the zonal architecture as a very important threshold. And for the upper level, level 5, we are making a precondition, an advanced zonal architecture, which means not only a zone controller acted as mainly as a gateway, but the zone controller really taking over control of several functions here across several domains, functions which would be normally assumed by an ECU or by several ECUs or electronic modules. And then finally, we are considering as well the bus, and then moving to level 5 would require as well Ethernet as a backbone bus, as opposed to CAN, for example. So as you can see at the bottom as well, so these are the main technology highly summarized, but we are actually tracking here 35 technical parameters. So all of these technologies broken down further in 35 technical parameters, which we are tracking at the vehicle level for this assessment. So we've seen so far the what. So what is an SDV and how do we define it with which technologies? And on this slide, we would like to see the why. So how do these various SDV level readiness matter? I mean, why is it important that a vehicle is reaching level 2 or SDV readiness level 3 or 4 or 5? Why does it matter for the customer, for the end user, or for the OEM? So starting with the customer, the obvious motivation here is the feature freshness. So this is easy to understand. With a vehicle, you can upgrade during its entire lifetime. You can actually keep the content in the car for the infotainment, for the ambience in the car, for other features. It can be lighting, etc. New, updated, up to date, and you can maintain really this freshness here for the customers. Customization is very important as well, and especially the ability here to include more AI-based features here. And then in terms of convenience, being able to save some visits to the dealership, having some over-the-air upgrades or debugging is always also very, very useful. And then when we are looking at the OEM side, so the first thing a lot of people are thinking about is the revenue stream, the new revenue streams, because it has been a lot in the press here, and it's interesting as well, the investors, for example. And this is what we have with the coins at the bottom. But what is important to understand is that we see the cost saving has multiple facets here. This is what you see with the dollar sign, and there are a number of aspects of it in terms of development cost, in terms of streamlined deployment of OTA, and even in terms of hardware cost, whether it's hardware cost here on the wiring harness or hardware cost here, if you can save on the processing, on the storage, on the memory, which are quite expensive in the car, if you have a dynamic allocation here of resources between domains. And then at the bottom, this is something touching on the customer as well, the customer loyalty. And the idea here, or the hope, is to duplicate in the automotive space what an Apple, for example, has been able to create in the mobile phone space, with thanks to continuous update of the applications here, of the features, to be able on automotive with its feature freshness here on customization to be able to create the same level of customer loyalty for a car brand as an Apple, for example, has created in the mobile phone world. So let's now apply this grid on to answer a really interesting question. If we're looking at 2025, which cars are the most SDV ready today? And I encourage you here to give a thought of it. What would be in your top 3 here before I switch the slide? And it's actually not a top 3, it's a top 4. And I'm pretty sure the majority of you will have Tesla in mind, and we see Tesla here in this, but only on the 3rd place, on sharing the 3rd place here. So we are showing Tesla the Cybertruck. That's the most advanced vehicle in terms of SDV readiness from Tesla today, and I will show why in the next 2 slides. But not the top vehicle. And at the same level here as a very interesting company in China, Li Auto. And just wanted to mention Li Auto as well, because a few days ago, they have made a really interesting announcement that they are making their automotive OS, Halo OS, open source for the rest industry to use. So that's really an industry first. I've never seen this kind of announcement before. So we are very curious on how it's being used or not by the rest of the ecosystem. But that was worth mentioning. So again, on 1st place, Execo, Tesla, on Li Auto, on both of them with level 4, and with an index here. So really based on the fine calculation with the 35 parameters we've noticed. So an index of 79. So just ahead of them, we have Xiaopeng with level 4 as well, but 80 with a P7 here, for example. And the reason why Xiaopeng is slightly ahead here is that is because of a software architecture here. So Xiaopeng has deployed a service-oriented architecture for all of its domains, and is farther ahead than Tesla here on this service-oriented architecture deployment. Tesla, interestingly, is slightly ahead of Xiaopeng on the unified OS, having more domains than Xiaopeng, but overall here, the ranking puts Xiaopeng just slightly ahead. But what's really interesting as well is looking at the 1st place. So we have NIO, and NIO is the first OEM in 2025, according to our grid here, which I presented before, the very first OEM to reach a level 5 here. So with a total score of 94. So NIO having reached, just like Xiaopeng, having all domains here on a service-oriented architecture, but also being the very first OEM to have deployed unified OS. So not a single OS on its own. All the domains here being unified in a cross-domain or single unified OS. So very interesting performance from NIO. So Tesla is usually seen as a benchmark for SDV, and rightly so. I'm looking several years back here because and this is very famous, but the announcement of the launch of the Model 3 was really an important milestone. It was the very first vehicle here on the market with a centralized architecture, with a central computer, with 3 zones, so very advanced here. And Tesla has been as well really a pioneer on the deployment of OTA, with ultra-frequent deployment on seamless updates here. And also taking advantage of this SDV development in terms of development cost, in terms of prototype cost, so really taking advantage here. And then in terms of new revenue streams as well. Tesla, according to our estimate last year, has generated more than $1 billion of revenue with paid updates here, and it's significant as well. And then altogether adds up to a nice position here with margins which are far ahead from most of its peers here. So looking at the Tesla Cybertruck, as we can see here from one slide to the other, Tesla has made improvement on several fronts. On the cybersecurity, deploying a cloud-based cybersecurity. On the OS, on the previous generation, there were only individual OS. Here on the Cybertruck, it's partially unified. And on the backbone bus, that's also the first vehicle of Tesla using an Ethernet backbone here between the various zone controllers here on the central computer. Not worthy, Tesla is also really a pioneer on the deployment of 48 volt. So it's more about the electric architecture here, but it's also relevant for SDV because the 48 volt architecture is quite efficient for the power supply of this very compute heavy on power hungry central computer. And then Tesla ahead, really important to mention in terms of scale for data mining, for revenue, because of the size of its connected fleet. So Tesla, really, really important, but as we have seen, however, Tesla is actually being caught up with Chinese EV startups, and I mentioned that before. NIO being right now in terms of technology, the most advanced according to our assessment. So NIO, really impressive here on BOT upgrade. Every 2 months they are upgrading deep inside the ECU, the cockpit, the ADAS, connectivity, body, convenience and comfort, and chassis domain. Advanced in terms of architecture. And again, the very first OEM here with a full unified OS with its SkyOS. So that's really a noteworthy performance. So we have seen Tesla, we have seen NIO, we could have watched some other EV startups, but let's look back here at the announcement of European OEMs here, which I mentioned before. So according to applying exactly the same grid here to this 4 vehicle, this is the result. We are seeing the ES90 here from Volvo as a level 3. So only level 3 because while it's strong on some aspect of the software here with on the OTA, on the service-oriented architecture, while it has deployed as well a central computer on a zone architecture, it's lagging behind here on some aspects, for example, on the cloud cybersecurity deployment, or on the operating system unification. If we're looking at BMW and Renault, so both of them quite similar here in terms of positioning, both of them at level 4 with a similar index, 77 and 75. So BMW strong on the OTA and the middleware, on the OS unification. Looking at Renault, what's really interesting here is their strong focus here on the commercial van applications here, because of the vehicle it's deployed on, with predictive maintenance, with the fleet management. And when we're looking at Volkswagen, it's actually only a level 2 according to our grid here. So on the main reason for that is that while there's a really good effort on the OS unification, on the cloud cybersecurity, it's still deployed on the MEB or MEB Plus platforms, which means on a domain architecture. And based on our assessment here, a domain architecture doesn't reach level 3 here. And we are expecting a real breakthrough here to reach level 4 with the ID Golf coming 2 years later here with 2029 or 2030, which should have a zone architecture. So you may say, well, we are a little bit harsh here on this assessment to only allocate an SDV readiness level 2 to the ID1 because it doesn't have a zone architecture. As context, I want to bring again here this grid here, which I described before. And as you can see, as a condition for reaching level 3 and above, we have actually defined the deployment of the zonal architecture. And the reason for that is that level 3 and above, it's all about efficiency. And we are seeing here the deployment of the zonal architecture really helping here in terms of efficiently deploying SDV. So it's enabling or it's facilitating the update of multiple functions, multiple domains in the same OTA, and that's very important. Another aspect we are seeing as well is that there is a cost efficiency. We are seeing with wiring harness the possibility to save significant cost on the wiring harness and on the weight as well of its harness. And I'm going to illustrate this here with 2 examples in the next slide. So here I'm quoting 2 OEMs on the impact of staying on domain or on moving to a zonal architecture. On the first example on the left is a quote by the CEO of Ford in 2023 on an earnings call, on an investor call, when he was challenged here by investor about the difficulties and prospect to catch up with Tesla with a Mach-E here, for example. He said, "We did not know that our wiring harness for the Mach-E was 1.6 kilometers longer than it needed to be, and we didn't know that it's 70 pounds heavier, and this translates in another extra $300 of battery." So that's a very clear statement here. And then if we're looking on the right, this is an extract from the press release of BMW here for the NK platform from last month. So it's BMW precise here, or clarified that it's based on a so-called zonal wiring harness, which uses 600 meter less wiring and brings 30% weight saving compared to the previous generation. So here with very clear numbers here, we can really see the concrete impact here of deploying a zonal architecture in terms of cost here. So we have seen several examples here of deployment of SDV on the underlying technologies. Now I would like to look at the broader industry here and seeing how fast the rest of the industry is getting ready for SDV. And what we are showing here is our light vehicle production forecast here, the global forecast, segmented by SDV readiness level, from level 0 in blue here to the level 5 at the top. And as you can see, the industry is transitioning fairly rapidly to at least connected car onto higher SDV level. So if you're considering level 2 and above, which means this is when you can start upgrading functions, by the end of the forecast, here it's more than half of the market. And if you're considering really the upper level, level 4 and 5, by 2036, we are seeing about 1 vehicle in 4 reaching this level. So as we project ourselves to 2030, we are showing here the 15 top brands in terms of volume for reaching the level 4 and level 5. On the first finding, when you're looking at this chart, is Tesla, how it's really impressively managed to maintain its lead in terms of scale here, in terms of volume of high SDV level vehicle, orders of magnitude in front of any other one. What you can see as well is emerging toward the end of the forecast here, BYD as a strong second. On more broadly, when you're looking at all of these 15 names, what is really important to notice is that 11 out of these 15 brands are Chinese brands. So the Chinese OEMs are really fast followers here for the deployment of SDV. If you're looking at the Western OEMs, Rivian is the startups here in this top 15, coming strong here with its R2 deployment from 2026. And then if you're looking at the traditional brands, we only have 3 in this top 15. We have BMW, Volkswagen, and Ram here by 2030. And this illustrates the challenge which traditional historic OEMs may have here to deploy SDV. And I'm going to illustrate this with a couple of examples in the next 2 slides. So copying Tesla is hard for traditional OEM, and Volvo is a good example for that. So the flagship of Volvo has long been the XC90 until now. Volvo had a very ambitious plan to deploy an electric version of it, the EX90, in 2022. And the plan was to have it in 2022 already as a very advanced vehicle, very much like Tesla, even surpassing Tesla in some aspects by including additional sensors like LiDAR, for example, but on a central computer architectures with zone controller and with a very advanced software deployment. This has been delayed. In a sense, Volvo has tried to do everything by itself, the central computer deployment around the NVIDIA SoC on all of the software aspects. And Volvo has struggled here, and this car has actually been deployed more than a 2.5 years delay here. And when it came on the market, there were a couple of features which were actually not on the vehicles, although they were initially planned. So that's the first example here, showing how difficult it can be here to make this big jump here in the SDV world. Another interesting example, which is known as well, is Volkswagen. In 2021, Volkswagen had a very ambitious plan as well, also inspired by Tesla, to deploy one single vehicle platform for electric vehicle, the SSP, and with one single software architecture here. As we know, this has been cancelled in 2023. Volkswagen cancelled the plan to have a single platform. SSP remains, but there have been multiple platforms for the EV. And it has been in the press as well, but in 23, Volkswagen has been also struggling with OTA deployment and has been stopping for a while the over-the-air upgrade here. This has changed really mid of last year, in June 2024, when Volkswagen announced its partnership with Rivian for deploying SDV. That was a really important milestone. And less than a year later, we can see the effect already when last month in the earnings call, the CEO of Volkswagen mentioned that Volkswagen is ahead of schedule with its partnership with Rivian. So as I mentioned before, we don't see the ID.1 as really a full SDV vehicles, but if we're looking at the ID Golf, based on the information we have, we are really seeing that it will be reaching a high level of SDV readiness, level 4, with a readiness index here of 81, which is slightly ahead of the Cybertruck, which I mentioned before. So really catching up here with the ID Golf. And some further details here on Volkswagen change of plan. So we are seeing at the top the initial plan here to replace the MEB and PPE platform with a single SSP platform for all BEVs with a single software architecture as well. And eventually the plan has changed, and there are multiple platforms here, extensions of the domain-based architecture in orange. But for the more advanced zonal with central computer architecture here in purple, What really is the big change is that Volkswagen is no longer doing that by itself, working with Xiaopeng, so very strong partner, as I mentioned before, for the Chinese market on the CMP platform, and working with Rivian for the rest of the world. On choosing Rivian is a good move. Rivian is very, very strong. It's actually the very first Western OEM here in our assessment reaching a level 5 as early as 2026 with its R2 platform. You can see here on this grid, ticking all of the boxes on the right, very strong, for example, on the unified OS, including for real time, for safety, for example. And if you're looking at a similar graph as I showed before, but towards 2036 here, you are seeing how Volkswagen may actually really see the benefit of this partnership with Rivian. You can see Volkswagen in purple emerging by 2036 as a strong third here. So really increasing with after the ID Golf deployment, and by 2036 with actually quite good volumes with its level 4, level 5. And if you expand beyond just Volkswagen as a brand, but you're taking Volkswagen as a group, if you're adding Audi and Skoda, for example, we are seeing here 3 brands in this top 15 from the Volkswagen group. So really interesting here to see how this partnership can help here this traditional OEM to catch up. If you're looking more broadly here, we're still seeing Tesla on BYD, very strong very strong advance on everyone here. But if you're looking at the rest, what is changing as well is that it's not only Chinese EV startup. You still have Li Auto, Xiaopeng, and Zeekr, but the rest here, you have 8 out of the 15 brands which are actually traditional OEMs here catching up. So this is interesting to see how they are starting late quite often with the deployment, but by 2036, eventually they catch up with the volume they can actually produce in terms of, it means being in terms of volume ahead of a lot of its smaller EV startups. Here we are having another look with another angle on this traditional OEM. And what we are showing here is the share of the vehicle production by OEM groups, so it means the Volkswagen group or the Toyota group, which is on high SDV readiness levels, level 4, level 5, in 2025, 2030, and 2035. So what you can see here is BMW on Volkswagen with the highest share of their portfolio being on high SDV readiness by the end of our forecast among this traditional historic OEM. So BMW starting early in 2025 with N-Scale platform. Volkswagen catching up here after the deployment of the ID Golf, thanks to the cooperation with Rivian and Xiaopeng. Mercedes, we are seeing here not quite with such a high share of high SDV level as a BMW. Strong on the software side, especially with the MB.OS on the operating system, but Mercedes starting later here on the zonal architecture. So that's why here having a smaller share here compared to a BMW, for example. Stellantis starting quite early here in 26 already, but focusing more on small volume segment at the beginning, on going more on the volume segment later. So that's why they're not quite as high as a Volkswagen, for example, here. So Renault, we've seen 26 start, but staying relatively modest in terms of overall share of SDV. The American GM and Ford starting around 28, 27 on similar positioning here. Hyundai, we have seen a lot of back and forth on their strategy over the last 2 years. Should they go with central computer or not? Should they go with zone architecture or not? We see they finally have made the commitments here and they are going and executing, but with a later start than the rest of the industry. And then Toyota, we are seeing here actually hardly present on SDV. We are seeing the strategy of Toyota being different than the rest of the world. So learning from the case of Volkswagen, on seeing how traditional OEM have really a late start. One interesting question we've been asking ourselves is, can traditional OEMs with deep pockets accelerate their SDV development with strategic investment in EV startups, just as Volkswagen did, for example, with Rivian, or through its partnership with Xiaopeng in China? So what we are showing here on the left is the vehicle volume on L4, on SDV readiness level 4, on SDV readiness level 5 for EV brands in 2030. And we've been highlighting with this red box here, the brands which are independent startups or independent brands, as opposed to being part of a larger group, like as opposed to being part of Geely for Zeekr or Changan, for example. So we are seeing here Rivian here as a potential partner. The partnership with Volkswagen is not exclusive. Rivian has mentioned it here in some financial documents that they are open for licensing the technology to other OEMs as well. So Rivian, a very interesting potential partner for other OEMs. If you're looking at other partners in the Western world, Lucid is actually the only company here which we identified here in this top EV brands outside of China. All of the others are Chinese EV startups. So we are seeing Li Auto, for example. So I mentioned very successful. Remember, that was the OEM which is sharing the third place on the podium in 25 with Tesla. We are not seeing them absolutely the ideal target, because they are very successful with their current volume, with their current technology and deployment. So they're probably not desperate to find a partner or investor here. Another one is Leapmotor. So interesting technology, but Stellantis has already 20% ownership here. So we're not sure whether they'll be open for more investors, but why not? NIO, with the other brand of NIO, Onvo, is actually probably the most obvious target here. It has great technologies, but it's struggling. The vehicle volume sales are not quite as high as planned. So they probably could be a really good partner open here for partnerships here with other OEM, traditional OEMs here. And then Xiaopeng is another good one here. So Xiaopeng has already started to license its technology here overseas. So another potential partner here. So one note of caution, however, if you may remember, one of the last decisions here made by President Biden in the US was to make that no US car could sell in the US with Chinese software on its built in this car. So it means an OEM partnering with one of its 4 startups here will be able to make business in China, in Europe, on other parts of the world, but will not be able to sell these vehicles using this technology in the US. So that's a limiting factor which needs to be considered. Okay, so for the last part of the presentation, I would like to look here at the revenue stream aspect of SDV, on how it correlates with the SDV readiness. So you probably all have seen some very ambitious targets here communicated by OEMs about the new revenue streams they want to achieve thanks to SDV. So Stellantis claiming 20 billion target by 2030 in terms of euro. General Motors, $25 billion. Renault and Volkswagen, 20% of their turnover. So there are a number of examples like this, quite ambitious. So while these announcements are very catchy here for the media, for the investors, I wanted to bring some context here before we talk more about revenue streams. I mentioned this already in the introduction, but looking here at what's in for OEMs, The new revenue stream is an important one, but that's not the only one. And again, the other aspects with cost saving, with customer loyalty, are just as important as revenue streams. That said, let's look further here at the revenue streams. So there are different angles to new revenue streams, but I'm just going to focus on one here in the time we have, which are the paid updates. This is a slide here from our team looking at the connected car services, showing clearly where the money is made today. So the vast majority of revenue in 25, and it was like this last year already, is today with ADAS, with autonomous driving, far ahead of other applications like vehicle performance, for example, on powertrain. So knowing the importance of ADAS today for new revenue streams, at least for paid update, we've been exploring how does the SDV readiness correlate with the strategy of various brands for autonomous driving. On what we are showing here in this matrix, I'm going to explain is on the y-axis, we are showing for a selection of brands the average SDV readiness index across all of the vehicle volume here of these brands in 2025. On the x-axis here, we are showing the autonomy pervasiveness. So it means on the right side, it would be a vehicle brand which has some part of L4 autonomy level, L3, a lot of L2+. And then on the left side, that would be a brand with low ADAS features here, so mostly L0 and L1. And then the other parameter we wanted to display here is the scale. Because you may have a brand here which is great on ADAS, on autonomous driving, great in terms of SDV technology, but if it only has 100,000 vehicles on the road which are connected to generate revenue from, it's going to be very hard to generate billions of dollars of revenue with new revenue streams as actually targeted here by all of these OEMs. So that's why the size of a bubble here represents the size of a connected vehicle park for each of these brands. So a first finding here when you're looking just at the distribution of these bubbles is it's interesting how linear they are. And we did not manipulate the data. This is really how the data came. And it's actually not surprising, but you can see how the more the vehicle is focused on autonomous driving, the higher the ADAS features are, typically the highest the SDV readiness is. What's interesting as well is to look at the type of brands we have here. And we separated various types of brands by color. So in blue, we are showing blue-green, we are showing the EV brands. In orange, we are showing the premium brands like Mercedes, BMW, like Genesis or Lexus, for example. In purple, we are showing the volume brands here. Again, no surprise, but it's interesting to see the relative distribution here with the EV brands all being here on the top right quarter, so high autonomy level, high SDV readiness. The premium brands more in the middle, and then the economy brands being more in the bottom left, so lower level of SDV readiness of ADAS features. So let's look at some of the names. So you would have guessed Tesla is the big bubble here among these EV brands. But Xiaopeng here, one on the best position here in terms of ADAS deployment and in terms of SDV readiness, average across all of the vehicle volume in 2025. On the other ones which are standing out here, NIO, Zeekr, Li Auto in this upper right quadrant. As we are looking at the same, but in 2030 here, you can see most vehicles or most brands here tend to migrate to the right, so higher autonomy level, on to the left, with to the top with higher SDV readiness level. On looking here at some of the names, Tesla here, same position as NIO and Xiaopeng, so they are overlapping each other. That's why you can't see NIO and Xiaopeng. But overall, if you're looking at all of these EV startups, what's really standing out is that Tesla is continuing to be the only EV brand with its scale aspect, with its scale impact. All of the others are much smaller here, and that's impacting their ability here to generate high revenues here compared to a Tesla with these new revenue streams. If you're looking at the premium brands, and again looking at the scale aspect, BMW and Mercedes are standing out with a big size here of their connected car vehicle by 2030, with in average a high SDV readiness level here, on especially for Mercedes here, a high focus here on ADAS. So two companies here well positioned. And here, this is our final slide here, looking at the volume brands. The one company I wanted to, and we have time to highlight here, is BYD. BYD I flagged before already, but really interesting here as well. So really scoring high on all four fronts. It's ahead in terms of volume. You can see the size of this bubble. It's ahead here in terms of SDV readiness. It's high on the y-axis, and it's high as well on the autonomous driving. And it's not a surprise. BYD having announced a couple, 2 months ago, I think, or less, than they want to deploy L2 plus autonomous driving level as a standard for all of their vehicles, or the vast majority of their vehicles. So really ambitious plans in terms of ADAS or autonomy development. Volkswagen, we are not being able to show here because they are somewhere in the middle here with the big bubbles. And the reason is that it's 2030 we're looking at here. And again, 2030, 2029 is when we are seeing the ID Golf emerging. It would look different here if we are looking at 2036, where Volkswagen would be more visible here based on what we discussed before. So this leads us to our conclusion. So really important statements. SDV requires a balanced effort on the three fronts, on the architecture, on the software, on the connectivity or OTA. This is how we've been actually establishing this grid here to define these various SDV readiness levels. Tesla was seen as a benchmark for SDV until now, but it's really important to see how the Chinese EV startups are catching up on the technology. The traditional OEMs are lagging today, but they may catch up with the right partnerships. I've mentioned here the interesting example of Rivian for Volkswagen. And then looking at new revenue streams, again, it's not the only driver for SDV. The cost saving on the software development, on the hardware, on increasing the customer loyalty are at least as important. But here, looking at it, especially at the paid updates, autonomous driving is dominating today in terms of revenue. And what is important to consider as well in terms of strategy is that the size of the connected vehicle in operation park matters if you want to derive new revenue streams out of this connected park. So all of this analysis here has been using data which we just published. We have launched a series of products recently on SDV. So most of the slides were based on the data was based on the SDV readiness forecast. So that's the model level forecast which we published in February. On the last part of my presentation with the bubble chart was coming from the SDV strategy dashboard, which we have published on April 1st, so just fresh off the press. We are going to release later this year another angle to the forecast with the ecosystem, so looking at who are providing which layer of the various parts of the stack here. Next year, we'll publish the SDV cost and revenue angle. On the right, I wanted to mention all of the additional related forecasts, which we already have on which are directly related on which we've been using. So on the enabling tech, we have the OTA updates, the architecture, the ECU, the semiconductor, the domain controllers. In terms of impacted features, we have infotainment, we have autonomy. In terms of new revenue streams, we have paid update, we have connected services, we have App Store. We just have also published a return on investment with SDV analysis, which is very interesting. So please connect with us here if you have questions or need help on these topics. We have the right tools to help you. And for your Q&A, if you haven't sent a question yet, you can use this box here. And we have time for a couple questions already. I'm going to look at what has come already. Okay, I see 3 questions already. So Renault first SDV is for commercial vans. Do you expect commercial vans to be a major target for SDV? It's a good question. So we don't think so. We see SDV more focused on the higher end segment. And if you're segmenting actually our analysis by vehicle segment, you'll see typically the segment D and E have a much higher take rate of higher SDV levels. This is where most OEMs are focusing their efforts. On looking at Renault, as far as we know, Renault has been deploying SDV on the Renault Estafette on a commercial van, mostly because it was the vehicle platform which was available at the time when the SDV technology, architecture and software was going to be ready. So it's not, as far as we know, it's not really a purpose. Now there is actually, Renault is making the best out of it with deploying dedicated applications for commercial vans here. But it was the result of a schedule as far as we know. But we have reached out actually to Renault to learn more about this, and to understand more about the specifics here. And as far as we understand, there's going to be an announcement pretty soon, and they will be able to share more about this fairly soon. So we will follow up on that. So second question, you are mentioning only ADAS for new revenue streams. How will it change in future? So yes, we've been mentioning ADAS for paid updates. So today, ADAS is by far the main domain for paid updates generating revenue. If we're looking in future here, based on my discussion with a colleague from the connected car team, we are seeing vehicle performance, especially related to powertrain, for example, fast 0 to 100 km/h acceleration or range extension for the battery. We see some of these becoming more important in future, so powertrain as well, but ADAS today is the main one. But paid update is not the only type of new revenue stream. There is also usage-based insurance, UBI, which is quite important. There is in-vehicle app stores. So all of these are covered as well by our team on connected car. So I will follow up by email with you, and I will connect you with the right team here if you have more questions on this aspect of new revenue stream. Okay, and the third question, and we'll stop here. Okay, Toyota has really, okay, that's a question. Toyota has really no SDV strategy. What about the ARIN? So yeah, it's a good question as well. So we know of ARIN, but ARIN first is going to be quite late. Based on the research from our analyst in Japan here, it's coming towards the end of this decade, around 29 if I remember well, on more for high-end vehicles and in small volume. On our Japanese, our colleague in Japan here in our team has been discussing this as well in detail with Toyota. On what we noticed is that Toyota has been quite cautious here. Toyota has been observing the difficulties of other OEMs here, which have been in their first step here to deploy advanced architecture for SDV. They decided actually to stay on distributed architecture. This is what really makes that Toyota is scoring low here in our benchmark because of their distributed architecture. And it's not a mistake, or it's not. We don't say that it's the wrong thing to do for Toyota. I mean, we need to consider their portfolio. They have high volume. They have little electric vehicle share in their portfolio. They have a lot of vehicle sales in countries with lower level of features in South America, in Middle East Africa. So where SDV is less important, where it's less important about its fresh SDV features here for the cockpit, for autonomous driving, etc. So considering that, it's actually probably not a problem for Toyota not to consider SDV as its main strategy for the future. But what we see here is that we don't exclude that for China, Toyota may have a different strategy. It's not confirmed, but we may expect, because Toyota has had a big share of the market in China and wants to defend its market share there. We don't exclude that Toyota may be partnering with the local OEM or technology providers in China and have a different strategy, different architecture, different software technology for the Chinese market to remain relevant in China as opposed to the rest of the world. So we don't reflect that yet in our data, but it's something which we are exploring. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. So contact us. You have a contact points you may need. Would like still to inform you about our next webinar, which will be technology evolution of suspension system, semi-active and active dampers, air suspension on electronically controlled stabilizer bar, and this will be on April 17th, 2025. And it will be held by Priyanka and by Mauricio in the chassis team. Thank you very much for your attention.